Ari is sitting. What is the book? The book is called the Thinnai, and this is the Thinnai. It's a wonderful, wonderful institution of Tamil Nadu, which I have come to greatly admire. While we are waiting, I'll tell you a little bit of a story because when I came back from Tamil Nadu, there are many things I learned that we are doing very badly in Goa, and there are lessons we can learn from there. So we went to a place called Kiladi. I went to Kiladi. So there's a kind of state-sponsored, but also true attempt to date human civilization in the subcontinent as old as it is anywhere. The Harappan civilization. There is an attempt in Kiladi to dig and find evidence of human archaeological evidence to that level. So this is an amazing thing which is succeeding. Actually, they're doing an incredible job. There are wonderful articles about it, including one in 52.in called The Dig. It's a riveting, gripping story of how they're finding these artifacts. Now, when I went to Kiladi, there are two things that struck me. I went partly, I went with my wife to Madurai, and it's quite close to Madurai, but they had opened a brand new museum. So here in Goa, we have no museums to really talk about, not from the state. We have two or three. There's the Museum of Christian Art, there are a few things, but the government has been appallingly bad. I mean, even worse than other parts of the country at museums. But Kiladi is built a new one. Tamil Nadu being so well, Tamil Nadu is a place I decided to go visit. First thing that struck me is driving to Kiladi is through a coconut grove. So Kiladi, the archaeological dig in the middle of these coconut groves, right? Driving there and it's still almost 1.5 lane winding through these coconut groves the way it used to be on the Goa coastline. And first of all, I'm marveling that we're in 2023, 2024. This is such an important project for Tamil Nadu and for India. Yet all the coconut trees are still standing. They're still flourishing. The farmers are still flourishing agriculture over there. Here in Goa, the first thing they would do if we had something, first they'll cut all the coconut trees. And then there would be some real estate, kind of shopping kind of thing that's built around it. So first of all, Tamil Nadu struck state on its way to modernity. They held on to the land coconut trees. Amazing. Then I go to the museum, and I am so deeply ashamed to be not from Tamil Nadu in a way, to be Indian, because they built a fantastic museum, right? And they've got these incredible objects, which are the equal of any museum in the world. Harappan time objects. What is it called? It is called the Sangamira. It's pre-Sangamira. It's pre-Sangamira. And the pre-Sangamira objects are displayed in this and it's such an unpretentious museum. You walk into it like you're walking into kind of like ICT is unpretentious, right? Sorry, I'm just waxing. Explaining my admiration for Tamil Nadu. So it's not even 240. I know. So I'm very on conversation. So what I was saying is that I went to the new museum in Kiladi, right? And so obviously I didn't pronounce Kiladi, right? Yes, you did. But, so the thing is, right? It's unpretentious. There's just a desk. You can walk into it. You write your name, number down. People are taking number. First of all, that's unbelievable. Secondly, you walk through this museum. It's glorious. They've got everything from cutting edge, so audio visuals, and they've got all kinds of riffs on ancient art and architecture, art and culture of Tamil Nadu. And you can walk this area for children. It's low rise. It's climate appropriate, right? So the rooms are not air conditioned. You can walk through it in a very comfortable way. There are two, and in every room, and outside every room, you have these thinnais. Now, I was really struck by this. Like in another country, in another place, like you go to the West, the great museums of the world, you have benches and you have places to sit. Much less comfortable than a thinnai, right? The thinnai is amazing. You can chill. I can imagine when I'm in my older days going to the museum in Kiladi, I might lie down also. I mean, they look very appropriate for
Vivek, you don't have to wait for older days. You just have to be appointed brand ambassador for Tamil Nadu and Goa at the same time.
I was struck that this is so user-friendly. I even saw there were animals in there. Someone brought their dog. It's such a user-friendly institution of the highest level, built for a world, some item of world heritage. And here's the kicker. This got me enraged, and I've been writing about it ever since in Goa. The whole thing cost 13 crores, right? So 13 crores are a lot of money, but in Goa we spent 1,000 crores on this and 200 crores on that and 800 crores on something and 4,000 crores on something else. The flyover, which is going to destroy all of our traffic timings in Purvari, it's some 3,000 crore project. I don't know the numbers, right? But those are the numbers we're talking about. Meanwhile, all of our institutions are declining, definitely not getting better. Meanwhile, in Tamil Nadu, they did all of this. They did it in a year, and they did it. They paid 13 crores for it. I mean, it's just an unbelievable thing. So this is a long-winded way of explaining the museum. It's a Harappan era civilization, or pre-Sangam era civilization. She can tell you more about it, but it's dating human history or in the subcontinent back to the Harappan era with very coherently. Of course, there is a triumphalist, nationalist, Tamil,
It's also part of why we do this at 13 crores.
No, but that bit really impresses me. If you can do it, and you missed the previous bit, which is another thing we never do in Goa. We drive to this site and you've retained all the coconut trees. Like the first move in Goa, first 1,000 crores may disappear or may not disappear. The first move is all the coconut trees would have been cut. I mean, that's just
That's why we call it, in Tamil we call it panel building. So we call it like, we consider that as a baby.
Right. Anyway, friends, we're here for a very special. Okay, interaction time will be later. So, friends, we're here for a very special event, and it's very special for me personally because I encountered Ari Gautier's The Thinnai when it first came out in translation. And
Raise the volume.
sure. So, I encountered Ari Gautier's novel in translation 2 or 3 years ago, or maybe 2 years ago when it first came out. And I was really struck by the world it evoked. And I also immediately realized that there were gaps in when we talk about Goa, which I spend a lot of time talking, thinking, writing about. I realized there are gaps in our thinking because partly for misguided nationalistic reasons in the colonial era, and then equally misguided nationalist reasons in the post-colonial era, we tend to think of these cultures and places in silos. French India, Portuguese India, Portuguese India, British India, etc., etc. But what happens in a place like Pondicherry and what happens in a place like Goa is that all of these places are present at the same time. British India is very much present, as anyone here can tell you, ad infinitum in Portuguese India. And French India is also very much present and has been present here in a profound way. What's more important is that the people from Goa are hugely present in Pondicherry and were and have been throughout the entire colonial project and including into its contemporary project. So this is something, this nuance is always missing. But it's an amazing book, and I realized that Ari Gautier has also been a remarkable keeper of a whole hidden history. So you may think there are a lot of people like him, there aren't. And the hidden history that he has brought to the fore has led a number of us, a number of people to the very rich, complex 15th, 20th century history of French India. So I'm very grateful to him. It took me to Pondicherry, and there I met someone who does not, someone who does not require any introduction to this festival, but Meena Kandasamy, who lives in Pondicherry now. We've been talking about her amazing book, which was launched for the second time earlier today. But she also has another incredible book, which is Sangam era poetry. Maybe she'll tell you a bit about it. It's one of the most remarkable. I would rank it along with Ranjit Puskate's translations of Lalde. This is one of the best books of Indian writing of all time, and translated by one of the best writers of our time. So I highly recommend the Book of Desire. Please pick it up. This is Meena's last event today. Thank you so much for coming, Meena. Thank you so much for doing this. Big hand, please, for Meena Kandasamy and Ari Gautier.
Thank you. Now, first of all, I need to tell you because, I removed the chairs and tables. And sorry for that because for me, Thinnai is just not an architectural element. It's a state of mind. So that's my statement.
Yeah.
So when you sit on Thinnai, that's why I said, wherever I go, any part of the world, wherever I go, I remove my shoes, I sit on the Thinnai as I used to sit in Pondicherry.
Thank you, Ari. Thank you, Vivek, for. Oh, you're still there. Thought you disappeared. Thank you, Vivek, for having me here and for putting us in conversation with each other. So I would like to start talking about Ari's book, but before we hear him read, I have to tell you about this guerrilla marketing strategy he had for the book. So I'm in Pondicherry. I had moved back from London, taking my kids for a walk to the nearby stadium. And I'm like, I see book posters. And not small size, something like, possibly A3, A2?
Yeah,
A2 size posters of this book. I was like, okay, in Tamil Nadu, it's only like maybe Stalin's book gets posters, or, a biography of Annadurai, something like that, political, that top tier. I was like, and it was like on the water tank. It was like on the corporation bin. It was everywhere. And I was like, wow, this is so amazing. So this was my first introduction to your book, and then...
And you called me. You sent me a message. I said,
Yeah, I
are
sent
you in
you-
Pondicherry?
Yeah, I thought he was. He wasn't in Pondicherry. But I'm going to ask you a lot of questions. So Ari is the kind of person who's, of course he knows hidden histories, very knowledgeable, and this book, encapsulates like 400 years of, colonial history, French history, Tamil history, all of this. But also, he asked me, how is the weird French man who's your neighbor? So Ari knew literally everyone and where they live in Pondicherry. So is he still with his dogs? Is he still like surly? Does he still drive? He used to ask me about his bike as well. So yeah, I was like, Ari, there's no CCTVs in my house, but how do you know so much? I mean, his knowledge of Pondicherry is so granular, so absolutely, like, there's nothing that, escapes his attention, but also the way he's kept himself completely connected to what is going on there. So, but I don't want to talk too much. But Ari, like one of the things that really fascinated me and which I came to know much later, not through the novel, was yesterday you were telling us I did 20 years in here, there, Vagabond's life. Can you tell us a little about that and how that feeds into your writing? And also, what it means to write when in an atmosphere where it's filled with academics. Because I think that this is, I'm going to talk about it later, but I just want to hear you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Meena. First of all, when people ask me, where are you from? So that's the most difficult question or simple answer. There's no simple answer. I said I was born in Madagascar and from a Tamilian father and a Malagasy mother. Moved to Pondicherry and then lived in France, and now I live in Oslo. So that makes me the most exotic object in the world because, I'm neither there nor here, I'm nowhere. And why I'm using vagabond? Because I'm a vagabond. When you don't have a shelter over your head, you are always like eternal vagabond. Yeah. And that's one of the reasons also Gilbert Tata is a vagabond. He's come from West Indies, from Guadeloupe, and ended up in Pondicherry. So why that person is like me, is also vagabond. So in that way, I think, and also it looks very chic to say I'm a vagabond.
Oh, no, I think it became an aspirational standard for me because there were like 3 words my mom used to like scold us. One was obviously riffraff. Don't do this because you're going to end up as a riffraff. So riffraff was like so cool, like that's what my mom didn't want us to do. The second was vagabond, like I want to do this, I want to go here. Oh, you're going to be a vagabond. And so so I know what it means. Thanks for sharing this. You spoke about the Thinnai here and this culture of, but for me the way the story of the book is framed, it's also a framing device, isn't it? Like where the narrator sits, where the narrator says, and looks through the entire passage of time. Can you tell us a little bit on the writing of the book and what made you choose this particular?
Yeah, that's interesting because I was in Nigeria when I started writing. My first novel, Karne Sukha Lakshmi, was about Pondicherry. And when I decided to starting a writing career, I was not really sure about what to write about. Easily I could have written about my migration experience at the age of 40 to Norway, and that will be like a very kind of migration literature. How to, you move to a country. But then I found out that there is no Francophone Indian literature. For 300 years, the French stayed in India, and we've been educated in French, we've been taught in French, but we were not able to imagine in French. And for 300 years, there is no Indian Francophone writer.
There's this writer from, she lives in Paris, but I'm not sure she lived in a francophone part of India.
Sumona Sinha.
Yeah.
Sumona.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sumona Sinha is writing in French.
She learned French later on. And
Exactly.
Yeah.
And there's another person called Clea Chakravarti.
Yeah.
She writes in French. There's also K. Madhavan he was the French teacher in JNU, right? But like, for example, Clea Chakravarti or Sumona don't have a colonial heritage.
Yeah. That's
But
what I was
I
asking.
do.
That's what I was trying to do. Those who just choose it as a language,
Exactly.
as opposed to people who are actually francophone by heritage. So yeah. That's the difference.
So for me, I saw there was a big vacuum there. There is no Pondicherrian writer at all. So for me, it was important to tell the story, the history of pre-colonial, colonial, and post-colonial Pondicherry through the indigenous perspective. Because the colonial narrative, what says the colonial narrative? That Pondicherry was a fisherman village before the French people came. So that is there for 300 years. But nobody said that it was already a thriving, that's why I'm saying, no. Do you know any village in India, fisherman village in India, we have 3 big temples, big ones, not a small one, not the Kuti temple, big temple. So it means it was not a village. It was already a...
Another said that about Chennai actually. He said Chennai was a massive fishing village where just the British happened to settle. Why do you hype it up so much?
Exactly.
So much, yeah.
So for me, it was important to, challenge the narrative. And the word Kurusukuppam, for example, that's the village where I lived. Kurusukuppam, when people, you ask me why is it called Kurusukuppam, they said because of the church. Kurusu, cross, it's Kurusukuppam. And then I said, no, that's not possible. I mean, do you mean to say that there was no people before the white people came? And then I did some research and I found out it's Kurichikuppam, which is a small fish. So the word Kurichikuppam has changed into Kurusukuppam, which suits the colonial narrative. So I'm challenging that.
Thank you. So actually it's quite that you bring about the 3 temples, and this is a small detour. I'm going to come back to the Thinnai in a moment, but because we are in a Thinnai, it's full of distractions and random conversations. You just tell us a little bit about the other book that you've written about Lakshmi, and I'll tell you one reason why. Because when the temple elephant died in the Manakula Vinayakar temple, I mean, entire Pondicherry broke down. I mean, I think at least 200,000 people attended the funeral, and those who couldn't attend the funeral of the temple elephant, I think it was a holiday for all the school children, and Pondicherry loves holidays. But I mean, I remember having taken my own kids to see the temple elephant, and they were like, it's such an amazing interaction to witness it, but also like people who couldn't take part in the funeral actually kept visiting the place where she was buried for weeks. And you just go in an auto and somebody would say, Ma, this is where she fainted, this is where she got sick, and this is the turning where she actually walked and died. And it's the way the temple, Lakshmi's story is so, just tell us a little about that and coming back to...
Yeah, because when I try to, and then I'll come back why I choose Thinnai, but Karneswika Lakshmi, I wanted to write the history of Pondicherry through animal perspective, right? Because animals are more intelligent than human beings, actually, and they have more empathy than what we are. So for me, Karneswika Lakshmi, that elephant, we used to walk in front of my house. I used to live next to Bharatiyar house in Ishwaran Koil Street. So Bharati's house was there and the elephant was there, and Bharati got killed by an elephant. So, that link was always there. So when I used to see that elephant going to the temple, I mean, she was crying. She was so sad. And why would you chain an elephant and giving what you call asirvad to people? what nonsense is this? So for me, that absurdity of what we are doing to our, I think and somebody says you can judge a civilization or society according to the way they treat the animals. So we failed that. And putting an elephant in front of a temple to give Asirvad, that's the most stupidest thing to do. And mainly when it comes to Vinayagar temple.
Yeah, but I think that's quite interesting, and actually can bring us back to your book, because people are not looking at that rationally. It's an absolutely emotive attachment, because nobody there is in a power to decide, oh, she can't be the temple elephant, and it's not like she can be rewilded, not at that point or at any stage. And this is quite interesting because there is a character in this book who is a Periyarist. A very staunch Periyarist. And this was again like after living in London for close to a decade, I decided to take both my children and move all on my own, and single parent in Pondicherry until my partner became ready to come and live with us there. And this was really interesting because I was here in Pondicherry and I would see all these Periyarist posters. And I was like, okay, Chennai as a center of Periyarism and this, rational movement was one thing, but there's a very strong Periyarist group there. And then after some point, I actually got in touch with them. And one day I have to say an anecdote. I mean, like, we are in a Thinnai, I can't keep to the topic. And so like 10 very senior, so the problem with the Periyarist movement or the Dravidian movement is that they have stopped, there's not a lot of recruitment from the younger people. So everybody is almost, without any disrespect to age, is geriatric. So like a lot of uncles had come and there were 1 or 2 young people. And so I was like, okay, let's be a nice person, let's entertain. So I went and like for the life of me actually made coffee. I made coffee, put milk, put sugar, and I went and carried. You had to find like 8 mugs because there were 8 people. And I went and distributed it. And one of the Periyarist uncles actually said, oh, the coffee is not hot enough. And I was like, you're a Periyarist. I am making your coffee. If it's not hot enough, I don't need your commentary. You know what I mean? So at the same time, I was like, okay, they're all Periyarists, but also this, this idea that women's giving comments on coffee, it's a very Tamil uncle thing to do, by the way. So, how did this Periyarist thing come about? And how is this, especially because Pondicherry is this melting pot of religions, isn't it? Like there's extreme presence of churches, temples, and also masjids, right? Like, yeah. And there's a lot of people from the Gulf who come back and actually transform the landscape of Pondicherry. Which place is that? It's also on the way to Pondicherry. There's like this entire settlement of Gulf returned people building big homes. So it's quite interesting.
No, but in Pondicherry, that's why when we talk about Pondicherry, it's such a cosmopolitan place, but more than cosmopolitan, we'll call it a Creole.
Yeah.
It's very creolized. Because like the generation of my father who went and worked in France, mostly we come back with wives and husbands. So there are people from Vietnam because Indochina was part of the French colony. There'll be wives from Senegal, from Algeria, from Morocco, from Somalia, from Djibouti. So all these people used to live in the same area, which makes the society totally different. But all these people who left...
Coming back to Periyar,
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. All these people, when they left before the independent movement. Like my father left before the independent movement. So for them, the Dravidian identity was very much. My father, that's why he called me Ari Vajagan. It's not even Ari Vajagan. So he must be... it must be too ambitious to call someone Ari Vajagan means...
both beautiful and handsome.
And intelligent.
Oh, yeah.
Arivu.
Oh, yeah. So, of course, intelligent and handsome.
Handsome and intelligent. So, this is me. So, he must be over-ambitious to call me, but it was not because of ambition, because he was living in Madagascar, having kids. For him, the Tamil identity was very much... My elder sister called Rashwaznani, so that's a Malagasy name. But the 3 other kids, pure Tamil. So he decided at one point that I want to keep that Tamil identity to my kids. So that's how it started. But that Tamil identity comes through the Dravidian movement, the self-respect movement. So he was very much Periyarist. But I also...
The novel is Pollen, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, lovely.
So that Tamil identity is very important.
Huh?
Yeah, Tamil identity is very important.
Very important, yeah. Yeah, in Pondicherry it was this, and so the other interesting thing I thought wanted to talk about, and because we are on the topic of Tamil names and Tamil naming, imagine if you called yourself Arivu. The rapper now cannot call himself Arivu. You'd have already been like,
Yeah.
Arivu was a nice short name. Ari is also good. Not part of that. Okay, so the thing is, what I realized, after moving, and this is the thing, you said there's no Pondicherry writer. Unfortunately, all the wannabe writers, all the writers who cannot afford the cost of living in London and New York, we are all moving into Pondicherry. We are not Pondicherry writers in any sense of the term. We just inhabit that space for like a kind of interim period, but just to say, and the surnames used to be like so French, and my partner, who's like Belgian, was like, oh, how are they how are the surnames so absolutely French? And then I read in your book about, like, let's say this group of people who are like starting with Ponnutambi, who you mentioned started taking the name Laporte. Can you tell us a little bit about the erasure, or rather the renouncing of Tamil identity to take up completely French surnames?
You see, what happened, it's like in 1881, after the abolition of slavery, the French people wanted to give identity to the slaves because they were just like a object to their masters. So they wanted to give them identity. So they, with the same idea, they wanted to give citizenship to the colonial subjects. So there was 3 places where they started to have this thing. One was Pondicherry, the other was in Senegal, Saint Louis, and Algeria. So means, like Pondicherry, what happened? So they asked, if you want to become French, you need to renounce your religion and come under the French law. So you're not anymore under the Hindu laws or Muslim laws. So you are under the French citizenship. So my grandfather, as I know, he was a pariah, I'm a Dalit. So for him, it was a good choice to become French because he can escape the caste system. So he became Catholic, and he became French and chose the name Gautier because you need to take a French name. And thank God I ended up Gautier, because otherwise there are people called soulier, like shoes, sata, kalsata, jatti. So they will give some names which is not even French actually. So whatever the object they find, they give the name. And the person who choose the name doesn't understand the meaning behind the thing. So that's why 1881 was a landmark for the Dalit in Pondicherry to become French, and 90% of the people who became French are pariahs.
Mm-hmm.
So for them it was a...
But it was also recruitment into the French army, wasn't it? At some point. Having to say. Thanks for talking about this, bringing the question of both race and caste into this discussion. So what I realized, I'm so sorry, Ari, I'm not trying to identify myself as from Pondicherry, but I've passed through the place, read your book, and have something that you can enlighten us about, which is. I was living in, so the Jesuits have this entire place in Kolas Nagar, and it was very interesting for me because I had this house on Arulanandar Street, and he was a priest. And then there's Veeramamunivar Street. Veeramamunivar Street is actually named after Constantine Besky, right, who did the translation of the Tirukkural. It was crazy because I was living in Veeramamunivar Street, and this was the first Italian Jesuit who translates the Tirukkural into Latin. And the only reason that he doesn't do the Book of Desire or the Kamathipal is because he was a Jesuit priest. He can't bring himself to write love poetry, right? So, this resonance was there. But what I also realized that, even though it was named after a famous Jesuit, was that this street is only leased or rented to white people. And very strangely, and I never knew that because I was living in the parallel street, and the guy who was the broker or the estate agent showed me a lot of homes, but never any home here. And then my partner arrives from Belgium, and he says, this house is shit, Meena, I'm not living here, let's go look for better homes. And then we are seeing another range of homes, just, because there's this unwritten, unspoken code about, and it's not written anywhere, and it's very funny, now I look back on these 2.5 years in Pondicherry, and these white guys would be walking their dogs or, going out with their children, just catching up with each other in French about, the French elections or what they want to do. But it's so surreal that they have created this, and all of them have Indian wives. I'm like, I want to be.
You know that Pondicherry is a divided city, right? There's a
Yeah.
white town and the black
And a black
town.
town. Actually, right now, I think it was like only 2 years ago, they stopped saying you should stop calling it White
White
Town.
Town, yeah.
They said call it Heritage Town.
Yeah.
And because, the idea is that when it's White Town, the Black Town is actually how the native people live. But please do tell me about the kind of segregation and the topography of Pondicherry, like.
But that's my next book I'm writing now. It's the memory of the streets of Pondicherry, because when you said why this street is named after someone, right? That's very interesting, because then my approach is the colonial urbanism, the urban project of colonial system made divided city, White Town, which is close to the beach, and the Black Town on the other side. And in between there's a canal. So, and each and every street has its own caste. There's a Chettiar street, there's a Komutu street.
Oh, lovely. Yes.
Right?
And this was very crazy. So I remember I couldn't have survived in Pondicherry without my babysitter. And then I had to someday, the child's school asked us to write postcards to people. So I had to get her address, otherwise I don't have to get her address down. So I got her address down. It was like Brahmanal Teru, Mudaliyar Kuppam. Like literally everything was named after a caste. And I was like, and that's the most surprising thing, because in Tamil Nadu we got rid of it, and just there, literally in Kadalur you couldn't have names like this,
Yeah.
and in Pondicherry.
That was
But how is it like that?
No, because that's the thing. No, when
the
the French people, the French people, when they moved to Pondicherry, of course it was not as big as it is now. So they invited people, traders from outside Pondicherry, to come and do business in Pondicherry. So people, when they moved, they will move in one street. So the Chetty street is only for Chettiars. So the Komuti street is only for Komuti. So there's a Reddyar street only for Reddys. So these people were living in each and every street. And also you should understand that in Tamil Nadu, there are two branches, what they call the left hand and the right hand. Valanga Mogotar, Yedangai Mogotar. So these people used to fight each other. Like, for example, the person from the left hand couldn't walk into Chetty streets. So, there's a kind of internal segregation that we impose ourselves. And Pondicherry colonialism, the urbanization of Pondicherry is exactly like that. They lived in a kind of ghetto system. Everybody lives on his own area. And even till very early, like for example, a person like my caste couldn't get a house on Chetty Street because the Chettiar will never allow me. And one of the thing about the Thinnai, however we say we can talk about the beauty of a Thinnai, but Thinnai also has its caste system. You can't go and sit on the Chettiar street. Thinnai.
Thinnai. It's
No, you
restricted,
can't.
yeah.
Because if you're a Dalit, you don't sit there.
Yeah, you'd have to stand and speak. You'd have to stand. Yeah.
Exactly. So that caste
observe
barrier
like
is
that.
also on the Thinnai. So you cannot just say Thinnai is beautiful. Also, there's a gender barrier. It's like woman cannot
come and
sit
stand
alone.
there. Yeah, sit alone. Yeah, unless they're really old and therefore
Exactly.
desexualized. Can you read something from this in the original French, maybe for just taste of the language, and then
Yeah, I could do that.
with
Oh, yeah. So we talk about Perrier, so let's talk about that. Très jeune, Thinnai et mon père furent séduits par le message et le charisme de Perrier. Ils s'étaient immédiatement ralliés au mouvement du respect de soi qui militait contre toute forme de superstition et d'obscurantisme religieux. Séduits par le renouveau du tamoul, qui fut un temps négligé, les deux jeunes gens s'étaient jetés corps et âme dans le combat pour reprendre leurs droits de Dravidiens. Armés de littérature tamoule, ils étaient prêts à livrer bataille contre le brahmanisme, considéré comme une culture des envahisseurs aryens. Ils passaient jour et nuit à dévorer les écrits de Ayotidas et les anciennes coupures de Urupaisat Tamilan, qui exhortait les intouchables et bastes castes à embrasser, à rejoindre le bouddhisme, qui était leur religion d'origine.
The English?
I don't know.
Please,
I don't know
please.
if I can find the same thing.
No, but it's been, I mean, that's the thing, I don't...
No, but what I was
hasn't
trying
it
to say is like my
Ari, was it edited? Because
Yeah,
I didn't read Ayodhya Das in this English.
yeah,
is
but
it there?
that's the thing that
That's
we can-
another political...
yeah, yeah,
okay.
exactly.
Okay, because I'll
but
read the
the
English.
passage I read,
I'll read the English. The
Yeah.
Oru Paisa Tamilan is missing. Ayodhya Dasar is missing.
yeah,
Oh my God.
yeah. But what I was trying to say in that passage is talking about my father and his friend. They used to because they wanted to get that Tamil pride back, and so they were fighting against caste system by the Periyar. What is that party? Political party again?
Dravidar Karagam.
Dravida Kargam. So they used to go and educate himself with the teachings or writing of Ayuthi Das, who used to have a newspaper called Urupai Sattamiran. So that is the passage of how they want to fight back against the caste system and also feel proud about the Tamil identity. Voilà.
Okay. This is, I want to just go back to the historical again. And the way in which this book is also, you know, and everyone's remarked about it. So you could read about it as just, you know, some village life or village stories. But there's also this way in which, okay, this guy goes to Liberty Bar opposite Uppalam, which is precisely where mostly, you know, where I was living. And I mean, none of that exists now. There's no Liberty Bar, there's no hotel on that street. And he used to say, but this is where VVS Iyer was giving arms training to Vanchinathan, who eventually assassinated, what's his name? Ash. Yeah, Ash Thurai. So, I mean, tell us about how you managed to work histories. It's such a rich
But the thing is,
amalgamation
see,
of
the
history.
appropriation of history is very important, and mainly when it's not written by a Tamil. You know, that's why I'm saying French people has been writing about us for 300 years. So it's time for us to take our own literature destiny in our own hand. And in order to do that, you need to tell the history of Pondicherry. I don't have the luxury to write about banal things, because as a first Tamil writer writing in French about Pondicherry, I need to set up the historical kind of base. There people can say, oh, this is what happened in Pondicherry. This is what, like when we talk about the Ari Gautier, when the Romans and Greek was doing trade, that's totally unknown. Vivek was talking about Kiladi, right? So Ari Gautier is, it's Pondicherry. So how... Arikamedu. So it's an old archaeological site where Greeks and Romans used to do trade long time before the European came to India. So in South India, you go most of the lot of places.
They're digging up all these Roman coins,
and
Greek
this and that.
coins. Yeah.
So for me, it's important to set up the base as a historian novelist to tell the story about Pondicherry, even that Pondicherry don't know. Like, for example, that VVS Iyer shooting thing, the thing. Nobody knows about it. What we know is about only Aurobindo.
Yeah.
Before Aurobindo, nothing existed. As if. So for me, it was, that's why I'm saying, writing is politics. You can't just write about, some banal things. So each and every word is political.
Yeah. Ari, this is very interesting that you speak about Aurobindo and but the tensions of the time of, let's say, the character here, this Periyarist guys, about what they call quote unquote encroachment by North Indians. I mean, it sounds very xenophobic if you just blandly put it that way, and But at this point, I found so much simmering resentment. And there was resentment against of varying degrees, right? Resentment against tourists. So on Fridays, literally all of us used to lock ourselves up at home on Friday afternoons and only emerge on Monday mornings to do our shopping, because literally it's such a tiny place and you can't take 5 times your population coming in for the weekend, And there's another level of resentment for people who are people like me, for instance, who just come there because it's a lovely place, calm and peaceful and beautiful, and then you make it your home, but they know that it's never home, right? Like everyone in Pondicherry knows that this is never home for someone like you, because you're not tied to this place the same way. But there's another level of extreme resentment which I felt was directed about the land ownership patterns of Pondicherry, because obviously White Town is exclusive, and there's all of the controlled by the white people and all of this renting, but they're saying that this actual landlord mafias of people being all belonging to the Bengalis or Oriya people controlling almost all of the land, or the ashram itself controlling all of the land, and it leads to very weird situations where, because the ashram owns these massive tracts of land, what should be a 2-minute drop-off for your kids is like you have to go across half the city to access the school, because the ashram has put these huge walls, and they're not going to do anything there. It's just going to be a garden. It's going to be fallow, but So, I mean, what do you think about this land and ownership?
I called it spiritual migration.
Spiritual migration.
These are the spiritual migrants. But actually it's very interesting, because Aurobindo, when he moved to Pondicherry, of course, it's to escape the... He was searched in Bengal. But the mother has done something very interesting. Taken over the entire White Town, left by the French people, because when the French people left, it was all of a sudden. It took like 8 years of negotiation between Nehru and Mendes France to 1962, right?
Yeah.
But when 1962, mother took over the ashram, because she was looking that she inherited of the entire White Town. People was just giving for 1 paisa, 2 paisa, like that time.
Yeah.
And then ashram, as I call it, I'm not going to say anything bad about the ashram, but ashram is another neo-colonialism. It's a neo-colonial attitude of ruling over Tamils.
But it is land grab as well.
It's land
grab.
of course.
I mean, you don't have to go into
what is Auroville?
whose origin story or where they come from, but it is like an
It's a land
absolute
grabbing,
land
of course.
grab. And well, at least we're not even going into Auroville. Auroville is another
It's
level.
another thing.
Another level. I mean, Auroville is another level. So I would
No,
like
but when it's a sect, one has to understand.
It's a sect, yeah.
Ashram is a sect where they hardly interact with the Tamil people. Now it has become a fashion that everybody wants to go to the Mother Samadhi and do their whatever they want to do. That's why I say it's a spiritual mafia who was taken over, and it became like very capitalist. Pondicherry has become a capitalist product of using colonial heritage.
I'm so
to
happy
glorify.
I'm not living in Pondicherry.
Yeah,
Keep calling
yeah.
it spiritual mafia. I can't return home.
But Karne Sukha de Lakshmi,
Yeah.
you
They're the ones of-
you talk about the elephant,
Yeah.
but there's also a dog called Tripod Dog Baba. Tripod Dog Baba is a dog with 3 legs who pretend to be a guru.
Okay.
And then there is Alphonse, who is a flying fish. So these are the 3 characters on the book. That is the most absurd book I ever written. But it also, there's a lot of metaphor used. That Tripod Dog Baba, you know who I'm referring to now, right?
Okay. Okay. Is there anybody who can ask questions to him? Because yeah, please. Vivek, yeah.
One is geographical, one is for Ari. Just before arriving into Pondi, there's a place called Doctor's Beach. Are you familiar with that? If you drive in from Chennai to Pondi, there's a place called Doctor's Beach.
On the ECR road.
Yeah, and I stopped and like, what is a Doctor's Beach? I thought you knew about it. I took a picture.
I've not been to India. I'm coming
sorry.
out into India after 6-7 years. I never. No. Serenity Beach is interesting. Serenity Beach is not allowed for Tamil people. It's only for white people. It's only for Aurovillians. You, as a Tamil, you can't go to Serenity Beach. Yeah, even today.
What if I'm Goan and not Tamil?
Uh-huh.
What if I'm Goan and not Tamil?
Well, that you deal with.
Okay.
But till
But,
now,
okay.
till now, the Oro Beach, Serenity is a little further. Oro Beach, if you're a Tamilian, you can't go inside. It's only for white people living from Auroville. or some Tamil people from Aurovilians. So let's not go to South Africa to find segregation or apartheid. It's happening in Pondicherry.
Okay, Ari, I have a real question. Do you feel a lot of pressure on yourself to write your history for Pondicherry, being the first of your kind? Do you feel any pressure or responsibility, if I may say? I'm just asking.
Yeah, no. I don't take myself serious, first of all, me personally, I don't consider myself serious. Otherwise, I won't be sitting on a Thinnai and just relaxing, So, yeah, I understand your question. Yes, true. That's why I always say, like, for me, even if I write a sentence, I do research almost for 6-7 months, or even I can read 1,000 theses in order to write that sentence. Because for me, the intellectual honesty is very important. I can't just write things coming out of my mind. And since I'm the first one, so yeah, that pressure is there, and I live up to that pressure.
So one of the things I found very interesting is that he's not only the first, but he's also an invariable in Ari's writings, and in fact his kind of one-man mission. He's holding on to an invaluable history, and this invaluable history is particularly the 20th century history that he lived in, which has this incredible transnational complexity and is completely lost in the stories that Tamil Nadu wants to tell about itself, or India wants to say about itself, or other places want to say about itself, which makes his work incredibly valuable, because he's not just, as he said, this is what, having read his work and followed it, I've followed up rigorously. It's based on extremely interesting histories which are written down but almost lost. So he's done an incredible job of bringing those back. And the interesting thing is, this is the fascinating thing about France, and since we're in former Portuguese India, I'd like to point out, is this whole thing that happened at the time of at the end of colonialism, and all of the records, as they say, the receipts are there, all the letters are there. You may be interested in this as well. France became aware early on that Portugal, which was ruled by an intransigent kind of delusional, actually formerly delusional dictator by the name of Salazar, France was aware that he was playing kind of bad cop at the end of colonialism. So France hid kind of behind playing good cop all along, and managed to cut an incredible deal with India. In fact, most people don't know this, but Ari is one person who highlighted this to me, and I found out it's a fact, is the tricolor only came down in Pondicherry in 1964. That's 3 years after Goa had been annexed. And so 64, I think. And no, 64. No, so the tricolor comes down then. Meanwhile, Goa's been annexed. Now, Goa, in being annexed, it's of course partly the fault, largely the fault of the dictator, but there are many mistakes made along the way. When Goa got annexed, there was no deal. This is a place that was occupied, and you can still see actually results of this occupation in different formal ways. Of course, the Goans have, got their own state, and it's a democracy, and many wonderful things have happened since then. But there was no treaty signed, and the difference is very stark. When, for instance, you may be interested to know, when international law, when, for instance, Russia took Crimea, or even when the United States invaded Iraq, Goa is often cited as a precedent. Suddenly you hear about what happened in Goa. Meanwhile, France got the best of both worlds. So the interesting thing that's happened, particularly in this new 21st century kind of tourism maelstrom, India is a much more rich country than it ever was. They're interested in their windows to the West. Like Goa, Pondicherry is a way you can go and think you've been to Europe without actually having gone to Europe. So Pondicherry has become much more French in real terms than it was in the time when Ari lived there. There are many more French buildings in Pondicherry today than they were when Ari lived there. And these buildings are being built in a factory kind of assembly line, and they are certified by Intac, which has a wonderfully activist, profitable chapter in Pondicherry, where there are 40 people working in Intac, and one of the things they do is they approve plans. This is a Franco-Indian building. This is a Franco-Indian building, so many new Franco-Indian buildings have proliferated in Pondicherry. And also food. It's interesting, there are more baguettes available today,
Than
and more real
before.
French food than there was when Ari lived there in the 50s. Can you
True.
imagine?
So that's why
this
now the
remarkable phenomenon of Pondicherry acquiring
how
a new French identity.
how to use
Yeah.
colonization.
A new French identity which
Exactly.
ignores the Pondicherrians.
Exactly.
Right? So this is a cautionary tale for us in Goa. I would urge you to follow up more, read the Thinnai. It's available online. I think there may be a copy or two on sale
Oh,
here.
suddenly it came.
No,
It's here.
wonderful.
So yeah.
And
So you can have.
yes, thank you. That's my copy, please. Sign my
Yeah,
copy.
yeah, yeah.
A big hand, please, for Meena Kandasamy's last event at Goa Arts and Literature Festival. Thank you so much, Meena, for coming. It means a lot. Please come back all the time. Thank you so much, Ari, for coming across the oceans. Ari has flown from Norway to be with us. That was not a ticket provided by the Goa Arts and Literature Festival. So just to point out, just to clarify.